The Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society podcast. Welcome to the Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society, a podcast dedicated to suspense, crime, and horror stories from the golden age of radio. I'm Eric.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Joshua.
We love mysterious old-time radio stories, but do they stand the test of time? That's what we're here to find out.
Today we present the third in a four-part series featuring special guest appearances by our mysterious patrons. Our guest today is Christian.
Hello, it's a thrill to be here. Thank you.
Christian is a generous supporter of the Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society, and as a thank you, we invited him to join us for a discussion of an episode of his choosing. So, Christian, what are we listening to today?
Meshough from Gunsmoke. The title of this episode is a bit of a head-scratcher, but we'll talk more about that later.
Gunsmoke aired on CBS Radio from April 1952 to June 1961, but the origin of the series can be traced back to 1948. As the story goes, CBS chairman William S. Paley was a fan of The Adventures of Philip Marlowe and wanted another series like it. His concept? A hard-boiled Western.
CBS Vice President Harry Ackerman, creator of The Adventures of Philip Marlowe, along with scriptwriters Mort Fine and David Friedkin, created a pilot entitled Mark Dillon Goes to Gougai. They recorded two different versions of the play, a grittier take starring Rye Billsbury as Dillon and a lighter one starring Howard Culver. The network preferred the latter, but unfortunately Culver was already starring in a Western, the juvenile-oriented Straight Arrow, and his contract would not allow him to appear in a second one. And that was that. The project was shelved.
3 years later, Norman Macdonald, producer of Escape and The Adventures of Philip Marlowe, approached the network with the idea of an adult Western based on the style and tone of two scripts by John Meston, Wild Jack Rhett from Escape and Pagosa from another CBS anthology series, Romance. The network dusted off the audition recording from Ackerman, Fine, and Friedkin and asked Macdonald to pull all the ideas together into one show. And Gunsmoke was born.
Author John Dunning notes, the show drew critical acclaim for unprecedented realism. Today it's regarded as, quote, among one of the best shows of any kind and any time. If you want to learn more about the history of Gunsmoke, we highly recommend episode 90 of James Scully's excellent podcast, Breaking Walls. We'll link to it in the show notes.
Meshough was written by Anthony Ellis, who previously worked with Norm Macdonald on Escape. We featured many of Ellis's superb Escape scripts on this very podcast, including The Abominable Snowman, I Saw Myself Running, and A Study in Wax. In 1958, Ellis created his own Western series for CBS, Frontier Gentlemen. The short-lived series followed a British journalist as he roamed the western United States in search of news stories.
Although Ellis never adapted Meshough for the Gunsmoke television series, he did adapt it for another lesser-known series, Dick Powell's Zane Grey Theater. The television version was renamed Village of Fear and starred David Niven and a young DeForest Kelley.
And now, let's listen to Meshough from Gunsmoke, first aired February 21st, 1953.
It's late at night, and a chill has set in. You're alone, and the only light you see is coming from an antique radio. Listen to the sounds coming from the speaker. Listen to the music, and listen to the voices.
Around Dodge City and in the territory on West, there's just one way to handle the killers and the spoilers, and that's with a U.S. Marshal and the smell of Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke, starring William Conrad. The story of the violence that moved west with young America. The story of a man who moved with it. Matt Dillon, United States Marshal.
Chester and I had left Dodge about 9 that morning. It was a good day, clear with a snap in the air. The horses felt it too, and they wanted to move fast. Not in the lope that we were holding them to. Chester took a couple of deep breaths and liked what he smelled.
It surely is a fine day, Mr. Dillon. A fine day.
I had some government papers to take over to Bill Holton at the post office in Pierceville, a place about 40 miles west of Dodge. Chester and I figured we'd stop overnight and ride back the next day. We followed the trail along the Arkansas and stayed with it as it left the river at Cimarron and cut across the prairie.
Looks like a big wagon train up ahead there at the crossing, Mr. Dillon.
Yeah, sure looks like it, Chester. Chester was right. The dust cloud we'd seen became 30 and more wagons taking the Cimarron crossing. It was a shortcut of the Santa Fe Trail leading on southwest toward Raton Pass. We passed them and our trail swung back to the Arkansas again. We rested, watered the horses a couple of times, and by afternoon we could see the warehouse, the store, and the post office, and a few of the other buildings of the town. It wasn't a big place, Pierceville. Maybe 50 people regular living there.
Funny.
Oh?
I don't know. It looks peculiar.
Yeah?
I just don't rightly know, sir. Just funny. It's peculiar.
You mean nobody around?
Yes, sir, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Mr. Dillon, what do you figure them horses are doing down there? It ain't right they should wander around like that without it. Mr. Dillon, they got their saddles on, too.
The horses were down the street, and as they heard us, their heads jerked up and they wheeled about and trotted off away and around out of sight. And we stopped. I listened. There was nothing to hear. An empty place, nothing to see. But there was a feeling in the town. You couldn't figure what. We walked the horses over to Bill Holton's post office.
You think maybe everybody in town is sick, Mr. Dillon?
No.
Or maybe dead? No, couldn't be that. There's no crows nor buzzards.
Bill! Hey, Bill!
Mr. Dillon, look yonder. The safe's open.
What? What? He wouldn't leave the place like this. Come on, Chester.
Sure is a funny thing, Mr. Dillon. I swear it gives me the willy-was. I never seen anything like it. Not a living soul in the
Hold
whole...
it, Chester.
Did you hear something?
I'm not sure. Just wait a minute. Thought I heard a kid crying.
I didn't.
Hey! Is there anybody around?
Maybe we ought to try the store, Mr. Dillon, huh?
Hey, all right, keep your eyes open, Chester.
Yes, sir.
We'll take a look in the saloon first. The saloon was about 200 feet back up toward the end of town. But we didn't get that far. They stepped out behind us as we passed the livery stable, and we never had a chance to draw.
Get your hands up. Hi. Now hold them there.
We did. and I felt my guns lifted away. And then we got a look at what had crawled into Pierceville. There were 3 of them, and they were killers. Man gets to know the look in the eye of a killer. If you're lucky, you see it in time. Now, we weren't lucky that day.
The law, Brill.
Yeah. Where you from, mister?
Dodge?
Dodge. Hey, that's Dillon.
No.
It sure is.
You Dillon? Marshal Dillon from Dodge?
Yeah.
Okay. You dirty... Shut up,
You want to try that again?
We will. Don't fret yourself about that, Dillon. You move in.
Take him to warehouse, Brill?
Yeah.
Be a sight better to get rid of him, if you ask me.
I don't think so. Not right now. We might be able to help.
I've always wanted a U.S. Marshal to help me.
Listen, Will. You take away his gun, you watch him. He'll be on his belly begging to help.
They took us to the warehouse, and we found out what had happened to the folks who lived in Pierceville. They were all in there. The kids, the 6-month-old baby, the women, and the men. Inside, there were 6 more hard-faced men leaning against the wall near the door, their guns held lazily in their hands. They'd taken over the whole town, and for some reason, they were holding it.
Shut up! Every one of you! Shut up!
Lady, told you to keep that kid quiet. You want me to do it for you? Mr. Dillon,
Be
you
quiet,
know what
Chester.
Yes.
Now, asking you again. Which one of you shot my kid brother? You hear what I'm saying? Which one? All right. Maybe you know this fellow just walked in here with his pal. He's a U.S. Marshal out of Dodge. His name is Dillon. I'm going to make him accountable for what you make up to do. When a man does a killing, he's accountable. Ain't that so, Marshal?
That's so?
Okay. One of these folks killed my kid brother. And unless he talks up, there's going to be a lot of killing around here. You get that? Now, you talk to him, Dillon. You explain the law. I'm a fair man. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Don't nobody try nothing, because we'll be right outside. Don't try nothing.
Chester, there's Bill Holton over there. Come on.
Help us, Marshal.
Marshal, please.
Hi, Matt.
How are you, Bill?
Could be worse, I guess. Mr. Holton, your face. What'd they do to you? I was the first one they worked on.
Will you tell us what's happened, Bill?
Well, they rode in early this morning. Whole outfit. I figured them for trouble when I saw them. Straight off, I knew. A couple of them held me, knocked me around. The others grabbed 3 women, kind of for hostage, I guess. Brill, he's the leader. He cleaned out the safe.
What about the killing?
3 or 4 of our boys came up, saw what was happening, started in shooting, and these snakes hauled the women folk over to the post office door and kept them in front for shields.
Your boys stopped shooting then?
Yeah, sure. Dropped the guns where they stood. Brill's kid brother was already dead then. Brill kind of went crazy, swore he'd kill the women, burn the town. Then the outfit rounded up a couple more women, and after that, everybody else. None of us wanted to see the women hurt. I guess we gave up too easy.
On account of his brother, huh?
He calls it murder. You heard.
They've kept you locked up in here ever since.
Yeah. He says he'll take us out 2 at a time and shoot us if we don't tell.
Do you know who it was?
No. Like I say, 3 or 4 fellas were shooting. Even they don't know which one of them it was.
Listen, Marshal, I'm Dave Maxon. I got a place outside of town. Listen, we got to do something quick.
Yeah, sure. Take it easy, will you?
My wife, that's her over there. She's got the baby. We come in this morning to get something at the store. You got to do something.
All right, Mr. Maxim. Now just take it easy, will you?
Look, there's 30 of us. The men, we could rush them. Some of us would get killed.
Now listen
we
to me.
got to get to the Marshal.
I'm thinking all of us will get killed. And that's not the way.
We got to do something.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, what's it gonna be? Dillon, step over here. Well, what do you say?
I don't know. Seems to me you came here and broke the law. It's the chance your brother took when he got killed.
That was murder. He was shot in the back.
Maybe he got turned around looking for somebody to kill himself.
It was murder. I ain't gonna stand here arguing with you, mister. Who did it? You think I'm bluffing? I tell you I ain't bluffing. If I have to wipe out this whole stinking town, I'm gonna do it.
That doesn't get your brother back. You in the habit of killing women and kids?
You shut up. Okay. Sanders, Carger, start with 2 of them. Take them outside. That fella.
You.
And him.
No. Oh, no, not Dave.
Oh,
Not you can't. No, not Dave. No.
Brill, you're crazy. You do this and they won't even hang you. You'll be torn to pieces.
You won't be around to see it. All right, go on, get him outside. Well, anybody got anything to say? Anybody gonna say who killed my brother?
I'll tell you something, you yellow, gutless coyote!
Anybody else? Okay. He don't count. We still need 2. You. Get away with him. Go on. They both of them outside.
They took the 2 men out, and we stood there. Some of us looking at the body of Maxim with his wife sobbing over him. Others staring at the closed door. It had happened so quickly there wasn't time to think, to figure anything. And there wasn't any way to shut out the sound of what happened outside.
Oh, no. I gotta do something.
No, Bill, don't.
We will return for the second act of Gunsmoke in just a moment. But first, a skid can be tragic if the road is wet or icy. A faulty windshield wiper that's a nuisance in a shower can be your nemesis in a snowstorm. The sum and substance of our message being, take extra care when you're driving under winter conditions. Make sure your car is prepared for winter, and then drive it with twice your usual caution. Now, for the second act of Gunsmoke.
Except for Maxon's wife and another woman whose husband had died, there was a quiet now in the warehouse. The killers didn't come back in again. Maybe for what they'd done, they didn't have the nerve right then. It takes nerve to look at the faces of the ones who are left. I found out that there'd been 12 of them who'd ridden in. Now with the one who was gone, there were 11. I talked to the boys who had done the shooting at the gang. 2 of them were willing to give up, but 2 others weren't, and I didn't blame them. We waited, Chester, Bill Holton, and me in a corner trying to make a plan. An hour went by. An early evening chill found its way into the warehouse.
I think they'll do it again. 2 more of us.
Not for a while, maybe. That kind will get liquored up first. It makes them brave.
I still think that maybe now's a chance to get outside, Mr. Dillon.
Yeah, it might be.
What scares me, though, is they'll start with the women and kids.
Yeah.
There's always a chance somebody will ride in, maybe see what's happening and send for help.
Like us, huh? Mm-mm. Besides, it'll take too long.
Mr. Dillon, let me try it. I don't want to hear no more of these women doing that.
Just let me think, Chester.
They're coming back.
All right. Come on, quick.
There's 2 of them. You can see through the crack.
Yeah. It's the ones that got our guns. Brill isn't with them. Chester, get on the other side of the door.
Yes, sir.
You, Mister, and Bill, behind me.
Okay, right.
Now, when they come in, grab them in time. Now, look. I want everybody to keep real quiet. Do you understand?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, now wait until they're inside.
You think the others might be around the back?
I don't know. We'll take the chance. Now, whoever gets hold of them, don't let them yell.
Hey, let me have a drink, will you?
Here.
What do you think?
What?
In there.
How should I know?
Well, we shouldn't hang around too long. I figure we ought to start riding.
Well, you know Brill. It was the kid. He thought a lot of them.
Yeah. Hey, there's one woman in there, though. Did you see her?
Tall one?
Oh, no, with the old man, the pretty one, the little.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we get her out here and the others will talk.
Might be.
I ain't saying it will make them talk, but a lot of men in there are soft about women.
What about Brill?
Nah, he don't care. He wants to find out who killed the kid. Maybe we can get him to talk.
Sure. Might be fun.
Hey, miss. No, you. Over there. Come on. We won't hurt you. We want to talk to you outside. Come on. He said come here.
She don't want it.
Cover me, will you? I'll go get her.
All right, now. All right, get the door closed.
Mine only had but one gun, Mr. Dillon.
Yeah. Well, this one's got 2. All right, which one of you here can handle a gun right?
Frank's about
Donnelly?
Yes, sir?
Here. We'll split up the cartridges. Chester, get over by the crack there and keep a lookout.
Yes, sir.
One of the kids found an axe behind those empty crates, mate.
Good. See if you can find anything else.
Yeah, mate.
Well, it's 3 of us now. 9 of them with guns.
Yeah, except that we know that and they don't. Donnelly, you're going to have to stay here. Chester and I'll try to get some more guns. Now, you got a good chance to knock out a couple more of them if they come in. Shoot to kill them, you understand?
I understand. Wait a minute, Matt. I'm coming with you.
No.
Listen, I used to throw an axe pretty good. I get close enough to one of them boys, I can split him. I'm coming with you. It's our only chance. You start shooting and the whole bunch will be on your neck. This is quieter.
Okay, let's go. You see anybody, Chester?
No, sir. He must be up the slough.
All right, then open the door. Now, if we hear any shots back here, Donnelly, we'll come running. Take it easy now. We got outside and made a run over to some dugouts. Up the street, we could hear the killers still drinking their courage back. If it had just been the three of us against them, we might have taken a chance, but with the women and kids in the warehouse, we couldn't do that. We'd have to pick them off if we could, one by one. And the first shot we fired, there was going to be trouble. Out to the left of the warehouse in the evening shade, I saw the bodies of the two men they'd shot down. A dog was moving around, whimpering. A couple of minutes went by, and then we started around the back and made our way up behind the saloon.
If we get in by the back door, Mr. Dillon, you think we could surprise them?
We can't take the chance, Chester. Not with only two guns. They get us, and you know what'll happen.
Yes, sir.
One of them's coming out. Look.
Yeah?
It's the fella shot Dave Maxon.
He's heading this way. You think he's... Oh.
Bill?
Yeah?
Think you can get him from here?
A little closer, maybe. Not from here.
He's got two guns on him. We need them. Stay in line with the post. We'll cover you.
Okay.
I saw Holton's big fist tighten around the axe handle. He moved out and down the alley in line with the post. The killer never looked up. He just stood there, head down, swaying a bit. Then Holton stopped. His arm raised up and back. And the axe caught a gleam of light and must have thrown it into the killer's eye. He had just time to look up and see the thing before it caught him square.
I haven't done that for a long time. I only throw at trees and boards. I never did it to a man before. I never killed a man like that.
Chester, get the other gun.
Yes, sir.
All right, here. Here, Bill, take this. All right, we got 4 now. That ought to fix us. Now, look, I don't like what we're going to do, but it's the safest way. We go in there shooting, get them fast. In the leg, anywhere. Try not to kill, but don't give them a chance to shoot back.
Yes, sir.
Sure, man.
You okay, Bill? You want to wait a minute?
I'm okay.
I'm telling you, I ain't leaving until the man killed my brother gets it the same way. No, sir, I won't hear that discussion. Drink up, we'll go on back now and see if they change their minds.
It's all right with me.
Thinking Marshal Dillon out this time. Yeah. And that deputy. Yeah. Too many marshals around this country anyway.
All right, that's enough. That's enough. Keep your hands where they are, Brill.
All right, Chester, take their guns.
Yes, sir.
I'm arresting you for murder, Brill. The rest of them with you.
Killed my brother. Got him in the back. My brother, they murdered him.
You know something? If I wasn't a marshal, I'd do the same thing to you right now. It's too bad I can't. I hope it hurts when they hang you, Brill. And it was over. And I got the feeling like it had never happened, that there hadn't been time for it to happen. But the dead men's women knew that it wasn't a dream. The next day, a half a dozen of the fellows, Chester and myself, took the outlaws back to Dodge. Most of them had been hit back in the saloon. One died in Cimarron before we could get him to the dock. But not Brill. He was alive when he went to Hayes City with the rest of the boys. I was there when they tried him. And I was there when they hanged him.
Gunsmoke, under the direction of Norman Macdonald, stars William Conrad as Matt Dillon, U.S. Marshal. Tonight's story was specially written for Gunsmoke by Anthony Ellis, with music composed and conducted by Rex Corey. Featured in the cast were Lawrence Dobkin, Vic Perrin, Bob Sweeney, John Daner, Lou Krugman, Michael Ann Barrett, and Ted Bliss. Parley Bear is Chester. Gunsmoke is heard by our troops overseas through the facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Join us again next week as Matt Dillon, U.S. Marshal, fights to bring law and order out of the wild violence of the West in Gunsmoke. Tomorrow night, CBS Radio raises the curtain on a new dramatic treat, the Theater of Stars, on the network that brings you Lionel Barrymore's Sunday Night Playhouse and thrilling stories of escape. Tomorrow night, for the premiere performance over most of these same CBS radio stations, hear lovely Joan Fontaine in The Guardsman. It's a sprightly, peppery adaptation of Franz Molnar's great French comedy, a romantic experience you will certainly enjoy. Remember, Theater of Stars, tomorrow night, premiere performance on CBS Radio. This is Roy Rowan speaking. America now listens to 105 million radio sets and listens most to the CBS Radio Network. That was Meshougah from Gunsmoke, here in the Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society podcast. Once again, I'm Eric.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Joshua.
And as we mentioned in the opening, we are presenting the third in a four-part series featuring special guest appearances by mysterious patrons and supporters of this podcast. And today, our guest is Christian. And welcome once again to the podcast, Christian.
Thank you.
Now, we'd like to know, you get approached and you're like, hey, you want to do this podcast with us? And you're like, yeah. And we're like, okay, why? And then you're like, cuz. And then I don't know how the conversation went. I had nothing to do with it. But at some point you were asked to bring an episode with you, and you did, and you brought this from Gunsmoke. Why?
I had two considerations. One is that I wanted to bring a new series. New is in the sense that you haven't talked about it yet. And I've been listening to radio dramas for many years, but this specific episode of Gunsmoke is something I heard relatively recently. It was after I started listening to this podcast. And I was struck by what a different sort of feel it had compared to many of the other Gunsmokes I've heard. Gunsmoke and most Westerns do have some kind of law breaking, so they check the crime box. But this one I thought had some elements of suspense and had some really unsettling moments that maybe kind of approach horror a little. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to bring something that isn't just new, but also something that is from a series people might not think of when they think of suspense, crime, and horror stories from the golden age of radio. And then secondly, I wanted something that would be a good source for discussion, not only about the script, but about other aspects, like the music or the performance, pace, and production, if I can borrow that phrase. So, and I think that this episode of Gunsmoke provides a lot to examine if you want to. So those are my reasons for choosing this.
Going back a while, I think you sent an email a while back, and something about you like Gunsmoke, and here's the deal. I can take or leave Westerns. If there's nothing else going on, I will watch it or listen to a Western. But I am not really excited about them, even though I have a tattoo of the Lone Ranger on my body. I was a young man. But the deal is that when Gunsmoke pops up, when you're like, what am I going to listen to today on old-time radio? I've always passed it by because, yeah, it's a Western. And you brought it up and you said you'd give it a shot. And it popped up a few weeks after that email. And I gave it a whirl, and these guys will back me up on this. I came into a podcast or something, and I looked at these two, and I said, so I listened to a couple Gunsmokes. Holy, you have no idea. They're really good.
I am pleased to hear that, especially since like the first 30 seconds of this episode, they really kind of Western it up. So I'm glad to hear that you have found an appreciation. But yeah, some talented people doing Westerns in the 50s, yeah.
But that beginning, that slow burn is suspenseful.
Yeah, it is a little like a Blue Velvet beginning.
Yeah, I am someone who does love Westerns, particularly modern Westerns, pretty much Sergio Leone and on. But I never really gave any thought to its pedigree. And it was really interesting to listen to this and hear the roots of all the things I love in Westerns, because I never listened to Gunsmoke or any of radio Westerns, or even like the old comic books or just the older little tendrils that movie Westerns grew out of.
This you sent to us like in 2018 with a list of possible episodes for listener suggestions, and we ended up doing a Bloodbath from Escape, which is, thank you, another classic episode. I listened to this when you sent it and really liked it, and I was like, but I wasn't sure at that time. It was much earlier in the podcast. Do we pull the trigger on a Western, so to speak? But now it's great to be able to actually discuss it with you, because I loved it when I first heard it, and I think I loved it even more when I listened to it for this particular episode, because I was more familiar with the work of Anthony Ellis, and I could really, really hear his voice in this as a writer, because he is so hard. He is not afraid of being brutal, but at the same time, he has a heart in his writing. There is a humanity to it that always sits alongside this unflinching portrayal of brutality. And that's one of the things I love about his work, but I loved about this script.
That scene, to jump on his heart, of that awesome guy who could throw an axe. Like after he kills someone and he's really deeply affected.
Yeah, that really stood out to me as well.
And it's not just this one, everybody. Pick an episode. They have a pace to it. They have a grit to it. They have a reality to it that's really riveting and really quite beautiful, just as this one was.
But it is very much the Western genre. One of the things I love about it is the ever-present reality of how isolated everything is, how isolated they are from other things.
An overnight trip is 40 miles away, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, help is not coming. You got two guys, and that's all you're going to get.
And even the beginning of this, it's a 40-mile trip to the post office.
Right.
He's got some like office work to mail. It's like, and this is what happens.
You mentioned it, Christian, in the beginning, and I am dying to find out, why is this called Meshougah?
Meshougah.
Oh, Meshougah is a Yiddish word, and that's a whole different thing,
They're
right?
both, I think, Yiddish origin. Well, Christian has a theory, and I think it's a good one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it is the Yiddish word. I think, at one point, Bill Holton, I think, says, bro's gone crazy. And I think that crazy, what kind of Alice had in mind here. And I imagine, but, crazy as a script title, not great. So I imagine that he is like asking his writing colleagues, hey, what's another word for crazy? And someone gives him Meshougah. And he says, I like that. And he types out how he thinks Meshougah is spelled and turns in the script. So.
Yes, because part of what confused us as listeners can't see the spelling, that the spelling is not the traditional spelling. It's not the Hebrew spelling either. It's just like a complete misspelling of this word.
That theory is absolute fact now. We're going with that. That's exactly how it happened.
Yeah, because this title of this episode is consistently spelled this way across various resources. So, just had this O in the middle for some reason.
So I love production value. That's a huge thing with me. Like, I need to be swept away and feel like I can see, smell, and taste everything around me, right? Gunsmoke does such a brilliant job of that. But that moment, it was 4 minutes of riding into an empty town and hearing the emptiness. I know that sounds ridiculous, but the willingness to be, when he says, shh, be quiet, and not just as a device to say we're listening, but to actually take the 7-8 seconds of silence and not be afraid of it, where then you start to picture what I'm doing now, which is they can't see in the podcast, but you can see them looking around and trying desperately to listen hard. God, it's just beautiful and terrifying. And I think you're right, Christian, that there is a level to this particular episode that psychological horror going on.
That moment of, do you hear that? Because I heard a wolf howl, I heard a rooster crow, I assumed that's what he said. Did you hear that?
Right.
So when he said, I heard a baby crying, that hit hard.
Yep.
Because it was not the sound I was expecting him to say.
And so when he listens and hears nothing, it's really disturbing. Like, why don't we hear the baby?
And then is it going down that road? Oh, he's hearing babies again. We got to get him out of here.
Did a band of baby outlaws attack this town? But I will say this about 1950s radio that I am only slowly figuring out. There is a confidence in the medium. They have this real clarity of sound, and they are not afraid to take their time with it. As Eric pointed out with the empty town, they aren't afraid of the breaks between sounds. They're not afraid to pick 3 or 4 really important sounds that describe the scene and just stick with those throughout the episode. I think we heard a lot of that a couple of weeks ago when we listened to Brave New World from CBS Radio Workshop, and it had a lot of that just really clean, sharp clarity to everything.
The other thing, Joshua, is that this is also about the time that theater started to change conversation style on stage from line to overlap to ums to embroiderment of lines to actual conversations. What I'm doing right there, the uhs. And it appears in radio. You hear it in X-1. In everything as you get into the 50s, it's just a different style of conversation and no fear of the silence. The only one I can think of going back a little further that attempted that was Quiet Please. Would not be afraid of a real conversational style, but absolutely right, Joshua, that confidence and that style change is so evident with everything you listen to right after about 1952.
I have a small, insignificant detail to point out, of which I was completely wrong, but I was 100% convinced, and when I heard the voice of that hostage who had the wife and the baby, that it was Tony Curtis. I thought, oh my God, this is Tony Curtis. And I felt hurt when it wasn't.
Not as hurt as he felt.
Was he dressed like a woman?
In my mind, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was another, really, when I was thinking of unsettling scenes, that was one of them. Just, those booming shots. He shot like 5 times, and, that screaming and the shocked silence and this, you don't count. I mean, that was, wow.
I'm still taking 2 more.
That the brutality of the killing, we get so used to, especially in Westerns, someone being killed and people moving on. The reality of those people being killed and the effect it has all the way up to Dylan. Like, all of them are like, oh my God, this is terrible. And to hear the wives crying and the pain and the horribleness of it, the reality of someone being shot in front of you is not exactly something that is pondered very much in a Western or in a lot of old-time radio, that it affects anybody. And that was long and drawn out. And the guy killing the other guy with the axe. That's brilliant writing. That's so real. How about the sound of that axe going in?
Not pretty. And I mean, they carefully create this scenario in which that is really his only option. So while it's horrific, you feel for him in that moment because it was really a kill or be killed scenario.
They are so meticulous with their, we have this many guns, we have this many bullets, I'll divide these up. If we shoot, we're going to attract attention. There are this many of them. That all those details just pull me along, and I'm super invested, and I pay attention, and I understand why they have to come with those acts. And when they go in, like, there's 8 drunk people in this bar, we have 2 guns each, I think we can do it now.
There's no bravado here, right? Everything's really practical. They have to think about this very carefully, or they could die, and then everybody could die. And those stakes, like Tim said, are always there, all the way through.
There's that difference between the infallible hero approach of, well, we're going to go in there and beat everybody up and then we'll be fine, to, listen, this is a really stupid idea and it's probably destined to fail, but we don't have any other choice. We're going to have to jump these guys and this is probably not going to go well. And speaking of the jumping, that fight Foley, grotesque.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Because he just punches them over and over again. It isn't like this cartoon Western where you get one little punch and the guy gets knocked out cold.
Well, and going into that scene, you hear those 2 men outside the door, and the conversation about the woman inside gets real ugly real fast. And then one guy goes inside and says, "Cover me," and like, that's not how it's supposed to go. This plan is going south real fast.
Well, and then the subtlety of that woman knowing not to get up.
Yeah.
Like, she just knew that the plan's not working, so if I just stay here, they'll come in. Without being told, without some kind of narrator telling you, he looked over at Dylan and he gave her a nod and a wink, see? So she knew to stay put.
And that's what I'm saying about this 50s era where there aren't as many narrators. Because, again, I feel like they are comfortable with this medium and know the audience is going to understand it and they're going to follow along, and they give you something a lot more mature. They are assuming intelligence on the part of the listener, whereas sometimes earlier radio did not. They were worried that you would get lost.
To move to what we just listened to with this, Gunsmoke, where literally if you go back and listen and really pay attention to how much you were actually told, you were not told much. Most of that is your head, and that's beautifully done.
Christian, you mentioned the music earlier. Did you have some observation about that?
Well, just a really interesting a range of styles. At the beginning, you have this sort of soaring glory of the West, and then exploring the town, that mysterious guitar and flute it sounded like, and that the escalating music with the axe scene. I thought it was a really intriguing mix of the styles and different types of music that really contributed. And like we were talking about, they also know when not to use music in narration. So, but that is something that stood out to me, the different types of music that appeared throughout the episode.
Yeah, I really appreciate that town being silent without music telling us that something spooky is going to happen or is happening. I just really appreciate that. Tim, you had a theory.
I have a pet theory about who shot that kid. I think his brother shot him. That was the only clue they give, is he was shot in the back.
Oh, Tim, look at you. That's good.
Wow.
I was so convinced that I thought that was going to be revealed. Like, we're going to go back and look and see who shot, but that's to the credit of the script. Like, that is not the point of this script, is figuring out who actually killed this kid. I have a delightful love of actual Old West stories, and a couple summers ago, I was on vacation in a town that I can't remember the name of, but I was talking about this town. There was a robbery there by the Dalton James gang. I'm getting a lot of details gray here, but there was a tour that went in detail of like who was where and who shot who and how they got away and who got away shot, and that little nitty-gritty detail. I love it. So I was kind of obsessed, like, who did shoot this kid?
What I loved about it, so I didn't think about who killed him, because I love the idea of it not being a mystery, that they literally couldn't tell you. I thought it raised the stakes in this beautiful way that nobody knew. So the only way they could get out of this is if someone was willing to just be the scapegoat and sacrifice themselves. So I like that it cut off a certain avenue of escape for them. It also leads into this other really classic Western thematic of a era in time, whether it's real or imagined, in the Western genre, in which justice and morality is still being written for the country. And I really liked how Brill was convinced that a crime had been committed when he's like, you tell him, you're a marshal. There has to be consequences for this. And Dylan's like, you came in here and robbed, you had to kind of think that maybe that would be a consequence of your action. But throughout the entire thing, even to the very end, when Brill finally gets caught, he breaks down crying because he is convinced he has been done a wrong and his brother was. And that's why I love your theory, but like I love the idea that he is just so believed that he could do as much wrong as possible, but when it was done to him, then we needed the law to step in.
So the end where he tells him he's going to hang and he's so distraught, and it was so sympathetic. You became sympathetic with this bad guy. It was such a beautiful moment of storytelling where you go, yeah, he loved his brother so much and he was after justice, and maybe he wasn't such a bad guy. He just snapped. And he said, you're all going to pay for this. And in other words, you could relate somewhat to it and sympathize a little bit at the end.
I really liked Brill as a type of bad guy who he is not smart, but he is out of control and highly dangerous. So there's no predicting him because he's not going to do the smart thing. But he might do anything.
I like that he's out of control, though, out of sorrow, not out of evil. It's just another interesting choice that isn't normally done. Also, you talked about America at that time was still trying to figure out morality and justice and how that worked. Would you send me a text, Joshua, when we do figure that out?
On it. What also struck me as really fascinating is that this could be a standalone Escape episode. If we didn't know this was a continuing series, it has everything that Escape has, right? It has this heightened, dangerous situation. It has William Conrad's booming voice in it. Yeah. It has that, again, we said with Annie Ellis, that really tough but human dialogue, and it's all built around this high-stakes, seemingly inescapable scenario. You can totally hear that booming voice. You are trapped in a small town. Yeah. A madman is killing everybody 2 at a time. Yeah.
Everyone you go to high school with is going to stay here. You might move to Minneapolis.
That's a little too close to home, that last part, Tim. Yeah, we called that going to the Muni in my hometown. That's where you saw everybody that didn't leave.
One more observation, again, about direction and sound, and that is when Dylan and Chester and the guy who runs the post office are going up to the saloon, the murmur of the gang at the bar becomes more and more audible as Dylan and company approach until we can actually start to slowly hear their plan and that they're going to shoot Dylan next. And I just thought it was just a great, again, piece of audio that really deftly positions you as the listener with Dylan and the heroes, and you get closer and you hear, oh, they're coming for you. This better work, Dylan.
Any other thoughts from anybody, weird of note, things that they'd like to tell us?
That seems like a desperate cry for help that you're in.
Is there something you'd like to tell us?
I hate my job and my family doesn't love me.
About Gunsmoke?
Oh, I'll edit that last part out.
Too late. If you're all cool with it, let's send this to the vote. I know where it's going, and this will be easy but fun to hear. I'll start this week. This stands the test of time. It has all the things that you need in a good story. So I'll say classic and really good piece of audio drama, but then I'll also say this to anybody: throw Gunsmoke on. Give it a whirl. Listen to a few more of these. If you are like me and you are trapped in that world of that TV show, and watching your grandpa watch it and thinking, oh, isn't there anything else on? Why is Gunsmoke on all the time? Just give this a whirl, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I'm also going to call this a classic. A lot of times, what I'll admire in a radio episode is, like, this could not have been told in any other way. This had to be an audio play. This is different in that, like, I would read this short story. I would watch this movie. I'd watch this TV story. This story and the way these characters are treated, I think, can translate to any medium and still be as compelling. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it is definitely a classic for me. And, as this podcast has continued to go on and on, at first I think I kind of just called things classic willy-nilly as in I really liked it, but I've slowly developed my personal criteria, which is things like it's of high quality to be a classic, it's an outstanding example of the series it represents, it rewards multiple listens, it has the potential to transcend its time and place and speak to not just a modern listener but a listener who is maybe new to the dramatic radio art form. And I think it meets all those criteria. But for me personally, it also made me reevaluate Westerns as a genre, because unlike Tim, who really likes Westerns, unlike Eric, who feels like, meh, I'll take them or leave them, I really didn't like Westerns. I found them really unappealing. My father was a child of the 50s, so he loved Westerns, and when I was younger, he always tried to get me to watch them with him or watch Gunsmoke, and I was just a total jerk. And thought they were boring. I was the Star Wars generation and didn't have a spaceship in it, so I dismissed it all. But I actually, after I listened to this episode, I called my dad and said, I just listened to Gunsmoke. I'm doing this radio podcast. I love it. We got to listen to or watch some Gunsmoke together. So, and I now, like, some of my new favorite movies are Westerns, things like Johnny Guitar and 40 Guns. So, like, you opened up this whole new genre for me. So, yes, classic and a personal revelation.
and that is exactly why, Joshua, your kids will hate Doctor Who.
No, one loves it and the other one hates it. That is true.
Christian, what's your vote?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I can't dispute the idea that it stands a test of time. I think the conversation's testament to that. The script, for the most part, stands a test of time. If it was written today, I think he might have done a little more with the female characters. Like, what if the widow was the one who threw the axe? How cool would that have been, right? Axe in one hand, baby in the other. Man, that would have been.
But what if she got confused and accidentally threw the baby?
Even better.
Yeah.
The baby holding the axe.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Tim, in the when we discussed the present tense episode of Escape, you talked about, you said you wound up admiring it more than enjoying it. And I actually, because I've listened to many Gunsmokes, I actually felt that way. I felt I sort of admired this one more than I enjoyed it. So it's I surprisingly, I don't know if I would call this a classic, just because, I recognize it as a great technical accomplishment. It's an excellent example of an effective audio drama, but I don't know, because I am familiar with Gunsmoke, there are others I sort of prefer. So I guess it's sort of how you personally define a classic. Maybe I might do that a little differently, but I'm definitely gratified to hear how you voted for it. So yeah. But yeah, I'm not trying to dismiss it as accomplishments, but yeah, it's just personal choice.
So maybe I will listen to a lot more Gunsmoke. I've certainly listened to at least 4 or 5 other episodes at random, and this still stands out as one of my favorites. But it'll be interesting to see if it stands out because it was the first one that really kind of opened my eyes to it.
5 years from now, or remember we thought Matt Meshougah was good?
What a load of crap.
Right.
I'll call my dad back and say, never mind.
All right, Tim, tell him stuff.
Please go visit ghoulishdelights.com, home of this podcast. You will find other episodes there. You can vote in polls, share your own opinion of what these episodes, if they stand the test of time or not. You can comment on episodes. You can send us messages. You can link to our social media pages. Send us messages there. You can get a hold of us in all kinds of different ways. There's a link there to our Threadless store if you want some swag, and a link to our Patreon page.
Yes, you too can be like Christian. You can support this podcast. I think he is a stellar role model. Go to patreon.com/themorals. We have all sorts of great stuff. Members only podcasts, monthly Zoom happy hours where we just all get together, listen to an old time radio show and discuss it. Kind of like this podcast, only in a far more informal, alcohol-soaked way. But it is a lot of fun. So please go to patreon.com/themorals.
Old Time Radio Book Club. That's what it seems like to me. If you'd like to see us perform our theater productions of Old Time Radio, please do that. We do theatrical recreations of classic Old Time Radio, plus a lot of original work that we have been producing for the last 2 years. Our partner in our theatrical productions is Park Square Theater in St. Paul. And right now in January of 2021, we are doing our theatrical productions online, but you can still get tickets and see this work, hopefully. And very soon we'll be back on stage monthly at Park Square Theater. Go to parksquaretheater.org to get your tickets to see us. All that being said, Christian, thank you again so much for Gunsmoke. Thank you so much for being a Patreon and a supporter. We can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And thank you so much for being you, because you're awesome and cool, and we like you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this is a pleasure for me. I was really gratified to hear this feedback. I'm Joshua. I'm glad you saved this choice. So yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. I'm happy to support you guys. I think it's great what you're doing. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Joshua.
You know,
Awesome.
Notice I was first. Joshua, what's coming up next?
Next, we have another mysterious patron. Evan will be joining us for an episode of Richard Diamond. Until then, look out!
His concept, a hard-boiled Western.
Sorry, that was a beer burp that came on up. Sorry about that.
That's staying in.
Yeah. You're really getting a peek behind the curtain here.